Ultron is here in Marvel Rivals, the brand new strategist who really serves as a hybrid between duelist and healer, and I'm sure you're at least familiar with the basics of his kit at this point, but as with all of my hero guides, I never pump out a guide before I have at least 20 hours logged on a character. So I'm never pumping out guides day 1, day 2 that a character drops, because I got to put in the reps, right? I firmly believe there are just some things you can't possibly know about a hero until you've spent a considerable amount of time playing them and really going into the trenches with them. Ultron's no different. There were things I learned at the 15-hour mark that I wish I had known at hour 1. So I want to teach you those things. And I noticed small things, like some of the other guides that went up day 1, day 2. You've got the YouTuber strategically placing their face cam or their watermark directly over the part of the screen that shows you their KO notification because they're trying to hide the fact that they don't even have him up to captain yet. You know, I tend to discount almost any video right out of the gate when they do that because it tells me that they're aware of their inexperience and they don't want to broadcast it. So today's video will really be focused on the application of his kit and the tricky information that the game doesn't lay out for you in writing. So hopefully you'll learn something new about Ultron in this video, even if you've already played a lot of his kit, and even if you've watched some other guides. I've got some tips to using his ultimate I haven't seen other people mention yet. So let's get cranking. Right up front, let me get some general information out of the way, a quick summation of Ultron's entire gameplay loop, right? Ultron's kit is not overly complex, but what it's capable of accomplishing gets compounded exponentially in the hands of someone who can multitask. Sorry to my easily distracted or ADD friends out there. In order to truly maximize your potential with Ultron, you basically need to have like no downtime in the game unless you're in between fights. You need to be able to juggle your healing drone from player to player to player, while also snapping your reticle back to key enemies and unleashing a devastating blast, while keeping your allies' health bars in mind, so you know when to use your Firewall ability. And in the midst of all that chaos, you also need to be able to mix in things like reload cancels with melees and drone swaps to shorten your reload animations and get right back to doing damage about a third of a second later, right? But that's maybe after you get used to his whole loop and you can focus on efficiency at that point. And don't worry, we'll cover that too. But Ultron is designed to be effective in the hands of someone who can multitask. You gotta be like a robot, like a supercomputer of sorts that can manage multiple tasks at once. As you're playing Ultron, imagine you're like pulling up your task manager regularly throughout the match, and you should see several applications running there, okay? If you're just running your healing program, you're throwing. If you're just running your DPS program, you're throwing. If you're only using your ultimate to get kills, you're throwing. And if your application that monitors teammates' proximity to you and what vertical plane they're on is not constantly running, you're throwing, right? More on all that later. But yeah, all this to say, you should imagine yourself running several programs at once if you want to experience the most possible success with Ultron. So let's break down each ability, give you some key insights into each of them, one at a time, and then we'll put them all back together. First up is the Healing Drone, also known as Imperative Patch. This ability has no cooldown. You attach the drone to any ally, and the drone will apply 45 healing per second to the ally that you've attached it to, while doing 30 healing per second to any other ally, including yourself, within an 8-meter spherical radius. Okay, now that spherical radius is super important. It's going to be important for the next ability we talk about too, but imagine all of Ultron's effects as being bubbles, okay, not cubes. It's an important distinction, and it's important because you're a flyer. If it was a cubic area of effect, you can always be 8 meters, horizontally away from the target, regardless of what vertical plane you're on. But because it's a spherical AoE, if you need to heal yourself, right, you're going to need to be on like the same y-axis, plane on the y-axis as the ally that you've put the drone on if you want to get more consistent healing from the drone. Now, there are 3 ways that you can lose that drone. The first is obvious. The ally you placed it on dies. Okay, that will despawn the drone. You'll have to attach it to a different ally. The second is if the ally gets too far away. I think it's 30 meters. It will sever that connection and you'll have to reapply it to someone. The third way that you can lose the drone is if you break line of sight with the ally that you've attached it to for 5 straight seconds. There's a little bit of a grace period there, but if they dip into cover and they pop back out, it's no problem. But if they go around a corner or into a different room, different lane, and continue in that new direction, then the drone will despawn 5 seconds later. But let's talk about maximizing your healing with this drone. So you generally don't want to just set it and forget it. you want to like manage that drone. That drone is your personal blessing of sorts. So you need to decide who gets your blessing in the moment. And that should always be either, you know, the person with the lowest health or the one in the most vulnerable position. So if my Iron Man is weak, but he's behind cover and he's safe, but my Punisher pops his ultimate and he's at full health, well, my drone's actually going to go on Punisher until his ult ends. Okay, because he's going to be the most vulnerable and he has the most potential output at the time. I really want to keep him alive. So he's the one I'm going to attach it to. He's the one likely to catch a ton of enemy focus fire. So he gets my blessing. Otherwise, just pop it from lowest HP ally to lowest HP ally. Okay, you get it. You're at critical, you get it. Okay, and default to keeping it on your front line. If you put it on a flyer like Storm or Iron Man, chances are pretty good you're missing out on a ton of healing potential since they won't be close enough to any other allies to provide that AoE healing for them. So when it comes to flyers, you know, I'll toss it on them just to get them back up to max health, and then I'll immediately place it back on the front line like a tank, Mr. Fantastic, someone like that. Now let's say you're the one who needs healing. Maybe you're in the back line and you and the other healer get dove, like a Spider-Man's diving on you, Magic, Black Panther, something like that. Well, put the drone on the closest ally to you and hug them tight. If you're up in the air, maybe that's an Iron Man, maybe that's a Storm. If you're in the back line with your other healer, you put it on your Cloak and Dagger, you put it on your Luna Snow, and then you buddy up with them, and now you're in a 2v1, you're both constantly getting healed over time. It's going to help you win that fight against the diver. And we can elevate that self-healing with our other abilities too. Let's move on to the Imperative Firewall. This ability is arguably your most important healing tool in your tool belt right here. This ability summons drones around you, and it also summons drones around the ally who has your healing drone attached to them. These drones create a little shield, applying 75 bonus health to you and 55 bonus health to any ally within that 8-meter spherical radius from you, and an 8-meter spherical bubble around the ally who has the drone. So you don't have to be like close to your ally who has the drone attached to them when you activate this ability. They'll just get that shield, and so will anyone beside them. And anyone around you will also get that bonus health. So sometimes it's actually better to divide and conquer here. More bang for your buck, more coverage. You can activate it if allies are kind of close to your healing drone person. Meanwhile, you swing over to a different ally who's maybe separated a little bit, and that's when you activate it. So now you'll have these two different areas on the map that are going to get that bonus HP applied to them. Otherwise, it's generally just best to use this when you're all clustered up, okay? But it's especially good to use this ability when allies are at low health. So what's going to happen when you do this is that you're going to apply that bonus HP on top of the player's current health pool, right? And as they continue to receive damage, it's going to take health from the bonus health pool first, which means your healing over time is going to be constantly applying more HP to their actual health pool. So it's basically like saying hold off on damage for a minute. We're going to start healing up your base HP while the enemy's just going to be chipping away at the bonus health for a minute. So it's a great way to sort of like offset when a player has received a ton of damage. It gives you a little bit of a leg up in terms of just giving them healing over time that's going to outpace, hopefully, some of the incoming damage. So it's a great way to do sort of burst healing in the moment to the person who needs it the most. A lot of people are saying Ultron is only good at slow and steady healing, but he can't handle burst healing. That is incorrect. And you've got this ability on a 10-second cooldown, so you can hit a targeted ally with this burst healing once every 10 seconds. So don't be stingy with the Firewall. Drop that baby constantly on your team. Right before a fight, give it to everyone for an HP buffer. In the middle of the fight, apply it to maybe turn the momentum in your team's favor. Put it at the end of the fight when someone's at critical health, right? But just remember, it's not a cubic area of effect, it's spherical. So don't be flying high above everyone when you use it unless you really need to give that HP to somebody quickly. Otherwise, descend so you're at the same spot on the Y-axis plane as your teammates before you pop it. Also, and I'll mention this again when we get to his ultimate, but make sure you pop the Firewall right before you pop your ultimate. Very important. I just wanted to mention that real quick. We will unpack it later. All right, next up is his movement ability, Shift on PC. It's Dynamic Flight. This ability isn't fancy or complicated. When you activate it, you'll do a quick boost of movement in the direction of your input, and then you've got this 8 seconds where you'll have a 40% movement buff, so you can get around more quickly, be kind of squirrely. This is great because Ultron moves like a pregnant 3-legged elephant. He's slow as heck, but generally you want to use this ability as, this is important, use it as a reaction. since he's so slow, it's best to save this for the moment that you actually need it. If you use it too early, you'll often find yourself waiting on that 8-second cooldown, or maybe you just used it, again, too early, and it's still active. That 8-second timer is still active. So you have to wait out the duration of the buff, and then you have to wait out another full 8-second cooldown. So you've got this whole 16 seconds in between your two dashes, and you could be like in a situation where you really need it right now. So save it for when you need it. If you hear an enemy ult get popped, right, or maybe you're out of position, you get hit by a Black Widow, you can activate your dynamic flight. It'll give you that boost. Gives you that 50 bonus health on activation, right? The second you activate it, you get that 50 bonus HP. You get that dash in the direction of your choosing, and you get to fly quickly to safety after that. Also, save this for when you are in your ultimate as well. Don't pop your ultimate while it's on cooldown. Again, more on that later. Also, the dash, by the way, does not make you immune to CC abilities. I heard somebody make that claim. It doesn't. Okay, so don't expect to avoid a Jeff swallow just by dashing the second that he surfaces. You will still get eaten. Okay, next up, we got to chat about his primary fire, the Encephalo Ray. I think it's weird that this thing can't crit, and they named it the Encephalo, because encephalo comes from the Greek word for brain, so it makes it sound like it's like a headshot thing. I don't know why they call it that. But anyways, it's still a unique primary fire. It's going to start doing this like little damage over time laser, and then it'll apply this big 75 damage single blast at the end of it, right? So it's half a second, 0.5 seconds of this little damage over time effect, and then bam, this big 75 damage hit. Now, I'm absolutely stunned, by the way, at how many guides I've seen where the person tells you that you might want to shoot the damage over time part to the side and then snap the reticle onto the target for the big final blast. I'm like, what? The math there is kind of dumb. Like, they argue it's because you really want to hit the big 75 chunk damage at the end, right? And they're like, oh, but if you hit them with the damage over time effect up front, they might like dash away or move erratically to avoid the big 75 burst damage at the end. But guys, the damage over time part, it's super fast, right? Half a second. But it does basically the same amount of damage as the burst at the end. It does 72 damage up front, and then bam, 75 damage for a total of 147 damage. Now, why on earth would you settle for 75 damage when you could have 147? I don't get it. Literally, the only time I will ever do this, where I throw away the first half of the firing animation, is if the enemy is already really weak, but so am I, and so I'm like corner peeking, I'm hugging the corner of a wall, and I charge it up by shooting it into the wall right in front of me, and then I pop out at the last second for that big 75 damage to finish them off. That's the only time I'll do that, but that happens like maybe, I don't know, once or twice a match. Otherwise, try to land the whole dang thing. Don't say no thank you to 72 damage and then roll the dice on snapping the reticle onto them for 75. Also worth noting, the primary fire has damage drop-off outside of 20 meters, capping out at 75% drop-off at 30 meters and beyond. But you can still do like really, really good damage to any enemy you can see, even if they're 300 yards away. So take a shot at anything you can see. But like I said, doesn't crit, don't worry about headshots. All right, we mentioned animation cancels. Let's circle back to that. You can't fire the blast back-to-back super fast with this primary fire. There's like this little 1.58 second animation that Ultron does before he can fire off another Encephalo Ray. All right, now, I mentioned earlier that there's like animation cancels you can do, and when we're focusing on that 1.58 seconds of downtime in between your primary fire shots, that's not the reload time, by the way. That's just in between shots, your 6-round magazine. Now, there are other videos, and this is why I tell people, be cautious when you're watching Day 1 guides, because there's a lot of guides out there. I don't know where they got this idea, but they're like, you can melee animation cancel that 1.58 second downtime in between shots, where they're like, take the shot, melee, take another shot, melee, take another shot, melee, and they're like, that'll save you time. Guys, it doesn't work. That is, it's a myth, it's a lie. They just didn't do the math, they didn't play it frame by frame. It lengthens your downtime to like, I think it's like close to 1.75 seconds. So you're actually firing more slowly if you do that. Not only that, but you're probably throwing off some of your tracking as well. You're trying to track the enemy in between shots, but you're also inputting like a melee cancel animation, and your guy's going through this weird animation. It's covering up part of your like, don't do it. Just don't do it. So be careful with these Day 1 guides. A lot of times they're giving you not just bad information, but downright wrong information. So be careful about that. The only time that you should melee animation cancel is during the reload itself. Now the reload is slightly longer, so you can wait until the reload animation is about 40% complete, so just under halfway, and you can do a melee, throw that in there, and it will save you a fraction of a second, but that's about it, okay? This is not as big a deal as some people are making it out to be. This is like a peak efficiency thing. It's not going to matter outside of like a high-end comp situation. If you were really trying to be the best Ultron in the world, sure. You can mix up animation cancels for your reload itself, because it is a somewhat lengthy reload animation. You could throw in a melee to shorten that up once you're at about 40% through the animation, but you could also switch your drone from one character to a different character, from one hero to a different hero on your team. And that will also, once it's at about 40%, that'll cancel the animation, and but it will count the reload as being complete, and you can get back to firing more quickly. That is like peak efficiency stuff. I'm going to tell you right up front, don't worry about that. That's not something that you actually need to be concerned about until you are so well versed in Ultron's kit that you can throw that in there and get that peak efficiency. Otherwise, don't sweat it, guys. And frankly, it's not always the right choice to fire faster, right? I talk about this in other videos. I'm a big proponent of trigger discipline. The best thing is to land your shots, right? So personally, I only fire when my reticle is in the right place, right? Sometimes the enemy will be moving erratically, and firing faster is actually the worst choice, as opposed to firing more intentionally and more precisely. You can cancel the reload by either slipping in a melee attack or swapping your drone to a new ally. That will complete the reload while stopping the animation short. But again, read the situation. The situation might not always call for that level of efficiency, but sometimes it might. Right? Just be aware of how to do it so that when you need it, it's an option that's available to you. Okay, now we got to talk about Ultron's ultimate. I'm still blown away by how few people use his ultimate to heal. Okay, they just use it purely as an offensive tool. Did you know that his ultimate provides the biggest chunk healing in the game? Yeah, you'll see me occasionally use the ult to counter an enemy Storm ultimate or an enemy Moon Knight ultimate in the background, and my teammates do not go down. That's because I'm applying 500 health per second to any ally I hit. That is a full heal for most heroes in the game. There's no offensive ability in the game that can come anywhere close to out-damaging that, in terms of DPS. So again, read the room. In the moment, what's needed most? It might be for you to pop your ultimate and go on the offensive and take out a couple of key healers, maybe just like isolate a healer, take them out, maybe get a healer and a duelist, whatever. But it might actually be better for you to pop your ultimate and provide a furious barrage of HP to your allies to keep your team from getting wiped and losing momentum. This is one of the areas where you'll really start to differentiate between the average Ultrons and the exceptional Ultrons, and it will be reflected in your healing numbers at the end of the match. You very well may be able to out-heal meta strategists like Luna or Cloak and Dagger. Now, I will circle back to that claim in a moment because there's definitely an asterisk next to it. But first, a couple of tips in your ult. When you pop your ultimate, you'll be a huge target for the enemy team, so never pop this as a 1v6 Hail Mary. You're never going to wipe the enemy team alone with this ultimate unless the enemy team collectively has the brain capacity of a slug. Play near cover, provide yourself a way out just in case, but there are two things you have to do in order to have the most success with your ultimate. First, always pop your Firewall right before your ultimate. In your ult, the Firewall ability will be disabled, so you won't be able to use it. You want to activate it just before your ult to give yourself that free 75 bonus health. Then, when you activate the ult, you'll get a modest amount of self-healing on top of that. But unlike the Firewall, your dynamic flight, your shift ability, can still be used in your ultimate, so make sure it's cooled down, because as soon as you start taking damage, you can activate the dynamic flight ability for a quick dash and faster movement speed. But you'll also give yourself that free 50 bonus health as well for a quick chunk of HP as you start taking damage. It took me several hours of gameplay before I really pieced all that together, I'm ashamed to admit, but now I do it religiously and I have a ton more success with my ultimate because of it. So again, Firewall, ultimate, shift. That's the cadence. Firewall, pop your ultimate, activate dynamic flight the second you start taking damage, and boom, you just gave yourself a ton more HP for free. It's a no-brainer. Okay, the last thing we got to talk about is his team up with Iron Man, the Nano Ray. Here's the deal. This thing is kind of poo-poo as a damage option. I greatly prefer just using his primary fire to using this beam. It does exactly half as much damage per second as Iron Man's Unibeam. Okay, let that sink in. And that's without Armor Overdrive active. If Armor Overdrive is active, you're actually going to be doing 73.2% less damage than Iron Man's Unibeam. So yeah, it will penetrate through targets and hit multiple enemies, assuming they're perfectly aligned, but that's not really happening enough to warrant using it primarily for damage. So my advice is that you use this beam primarily for its healing capacity, because it actually does a massive 85 healing per second. Now that's pretty respectable, and again, it can hit multiple allies at once, so it's a huge healing resource. My advice: use it to heal, not to harm. Okay, let's wrap this video up with a couple of minor additional tips and bring it on home. Quick tip: if you queue up your primary fire and you realize it's going to miss for whatever reason, maybe the enemy makes it to cover, maybe they toss a shield up in your face, maybe they die to some other damage source, you can just cancel the firing animation with a melee or a reload. It's just an efficiency thing. It'll save you a fraction of a second where you don't need to go through the full firing animation, right? Another quick tip: don't fly high and alone, okay? Like you don't ever really want to do that if you can help it. You'll be exposed, you'll be a target for poke enemies like Hela and Adam, as well as divers like Spidey. So generally speaking, just because you can fly doesn't mean you need to go all the way up to the ceiling. Remember that a lot of your abilities rely on proximity with your teammates to be truly effective, so you really want to stay near your team at all times. Never be off by yourself like you're an Iron Man looking for some free splash damage or something. And your biggest threats go beyond the obvious ones. Like most people will tell you, avoid Helas, they're your big threat. I say use your strafing in 3 dimensions, right? Left, right, up, down, to avoid her fire while landing a couple of key shots on her and baiting out her Raven ability. You can actually take down Helas pretty consistently if you get them isolated. Your biggest threats are actually going to be Hawkeyes, Widows, Buckies, and Mr. Fantastics. Okay, Hawkeyes and Widows will they'll make you their primary target, and Bucky and Mr. Fantastic can ground you if you let them get too close. It just takes them hitting you one time for your flight to be off the table, and that makes them dangerous. And circling back to my claim that you can out-heal Lunas and Cloaks and Daggers, that can happen. It won't consistently happen, all right? We just look at healing output. Luna and Cloak and Dagger are just a little bit more, they're a little bit better in efficiency. They're more versatile with their heals. Yours are more situational, okay? Your healing numbers can surpass theirs, but it does depend on where your team is spending their time. If they're spending time more clustered up, you're getting more AoE healing, then yeah, you can out-heal a Luna and a Cloak and Dagger. But again, that's kind of out of your hands. You can try and maximize your potential, but it is sort of up to your allies and how close they're going to be holding the front line together if you're going to really get a ton of healing numbers for the end screen at the end of the game. So you can out-heal Luna, Cloak and Dagger, or any other healer, etc. It's possible, but again, some of that isn't up to you, so just keep that in mind. And with that, let's close it out. That's my guide for how to use Ultron to his greatest potential. Remember, you're running multiple programs at once. You are a damage dealer, but you are a healer. You need to be mindful of where your allies are on the battlefield and what their health is like so that you can swap the drone around and provide firewall healing exactly when it's needed. Remember that you're a multitasker, so don't tunnel vision, or you'll actually be more of a liability than an asset. Thanks so much for watching the video today. If you enjoyed it, would you let me know by leaving a like on the video, as that is the best free way to support the content right here on YouTube, and consider subscribing for additional Marvel Rivals content. Hey, be warm and well fed, my friends, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.